You know, a friend and colleague asked me today, she asked me, did you always do change management? And I said, absolutely not. And it made me think about the adoption curve and leading change and where I've been on it as an end user and as a leader of change as well. I haven't always got it right, but right back at the start of my career, I was a geographical information system enthusiast, now called spatial resource planning, and I managed to persuade the government agency that I was working with to give me £10,000, which was a lot of money in 1987 or 1988, to implement a geographical information system for the entire organisation. I remember one point I had 6 SunSpark microcomputers sitting on my desk, setting them up. When I think about it, what was I doing? I was telling people why we should have the geographical information system. Awareness. I was describing what was in it for them and what was in it for the organisation. I was training people on it. I was coaching them on how to use it in their job, and I was continually reinforcing it. Eventually it became an organisational standard. So I guess I was a kind of champion, early adopter, and I was doing it from the bottom up. But one of the lessons from that was, it wasn't until I met the chief executive officer of this government agency, and here's me, just a new employee, made my presentation, they all loved it, and I was given the money, and it eventually became an organisational competency. So even then I was doing it, although I didn't know I was doing it. And in that case, it was driven by a massive enthusiasm for geographical information systems. But in that case, I was definitely an early adopter or innovator. I've also been an early majority, a late majority, and should I admit it, laggard in terms of adopting new things throughout my career as well. I guess we can all think of examples of that. And then when it comes to leading change, I certainly haven't been doing change management as I now know I should have over the years, and led many IT departments and even IT projects. And I assumed the first few times I did IT projects for organisations, I led them, that my job ended when the project was deployed, when the technical tool was deployed. And apart from training, and perhaps, if I was lucky, a bit of comms, I didn't give change management much thought. I guess now I know that at the time I was just assuming that people would magically adopt. And I began to realise that even leading an IT programme, my job doesn't finish when the thing is deployed. That's actually when my job is starting. So I've got to be responsible for driving the business benefit that I promised by spending X amount of money on this new system, this new tool. It's my job to make sure that the business benefit is realised, and the business benefit for most projects like that is not realised by deploying it, it's realised by people embracing, adopting and using it. And I gradually began to understand that I had to do something beyond deployment. And then of course when I first discovered the ProSci materials, even other change management methodologies, all made sense, but I'd never put it together. You know, I thought, oh yeah, there's a bit about communication, there's a bit about sponsorship, there's a bit about engaging managers, there's all of that stuff. But I'd never put it together in a systematic way. I didn't have the tools and the techniques and the vocabulary. And then when I started doing ProSci and went on my journey to become a ProSci certified advanced instructor, I began to understand all of this stuff intimately, and it just made more and more sense. And a lot of people I teach the ProSci methodology to and certify them, that's what they say to me. They say, you know, this all makes sense. I knew all the bits. It was like a large jigsaw, but this puts it all together. And of course, there's a whole bunch of bits that people didn't know about, which is also a revelation. So for me, my journey, I guess, in the mid-1980s, I started off as an end user. What was I using? WordPerfect, was it? Yeah, WordPerfect, Lotus Notes with those three-dimensional tables, and I always liked that. And then they tried to impose different systems, and we didn't know why. We weren't aware, we didn't know what was in it for us, and then I got more senior. Eventually became to lead such projects or departments, still didn't get it, had my own business. Yeah, a bit of change management, but nothing systematic. And it's only when I got to ProSci it all crystallised and it all made sense. And so what's my recommendation from all of this? My recommendation is take the wisdom and the tools and the techniques and the vocabulary and the best practices that ProSci provides, build in, as I said in other videos, good advice from other methodologies, and really focus on it. Now, particularly with consumption economics, we're all in a world of consumption economics. You know, think about it. You subscribe to Spotify, you consume a musical track, and part of your subscription is to pays that artist for your consumption of their track. Although there is a debate about do artists get enough. That's for another time. So we consume services, we're getting used to consuming stuff that lives in the cloud. We consume Netflix, we consume Amazon Prime, we consume Apple Music, we consume all of that. That's consumption economics. And all of that depends on people embracing, adopting and using and deciding to use that stuff regularly. And particularly with organisational systems, when it's all dependent on consumption economics, then the vendor of those products depends on consumption, adoption, but so does the organisation for its return of investment, for its business benefit, to compete with competitors, to remain profitable, etc. And so change management is at the core of all of that, particularly for organisations. I wish I had known that 35, 40 years ago. Now that I do know it, as many other people know it too, you know, if you haven't started in that journey, take good advice, make it your own, and make it real in your organisation.